Hello, this is going to be a quickly done video to get some important information out about the game Final Act, which is now on Kickstarter. What I have is a prototype version. In fact, it's the only prototype version that exists. It's been worn and play tested and been around the world, I think. But it still looks very good, and I want to show you about it and give you a sense of what the components are like. First of all, this is a huge box, isn't it? And the good news is it's not going to be quite as big a box when you get yours, because this prototype version was created and then weighed as they went to the manufacturers. And in trying to keep the shipping down, 4 pounds is kind of a magic threshold. More than 4 pounds cost way more than a little under 4 pounds. So to get the weight down, they've reduced the size of some of the components, the cardboard, by 15%. How much is that? Well, your box is going to be that much smaller. Almost a foot by a foot. Not much smaller. Doesn't really matter. It's still a good sized box. And also, the board itself, the map board, is going to be 15% smaller. You can see it's a huge map board anyway, so that's not a bad thing. The terrain components will also be 15% smaller, but the wooden components, the tanks and stuff, will be the same size. And before I go any farther, I wanted to give you a sense of that. Let's zoom in right here. This is an American quarter. This is a €2 coin, and this is one of the tanks. That's how big these puppies are, and that size is going to stay. The shells will stay the same that you used to shoot. So, as you can see on the map, there's still plenty of room for this. It can be 15% smaller easily, and not a problem. So that covers the size thing. Let's move on to what you're getting for that size. Pull back out. The game represents abstract tank combat. And in looking at the components in the setup, first of all, you can see what the other side looks. Both sides have the same terrain, and before the game starts, each player will set up, you'll put a screen up, and you'll set up, you've got a small hill, large hill, a lake or swamp, and a minefield. You'll set those up anywhere you want to, and you'll set up your tank figures with lots of permutations so that every time that screen comes up, there'll be a little mini surprise for what you set up for your opponent and what your opponent has set up for you. Now, while these are 15% smaller, the quality is still going to be there. You've got very, very thick cardboard, and the hills or berms are cardboard on top of plywood. You can see how heavy and thick they are, and what's nice about it is it gives a game a genuine three-dimensional feel. Let's drop the camera down just a bit so we can get back on the board now. So when the tanks are behind the berm, the line of sight's blocked. When they're on top of the berm, they can actually shoot a little bit farther. But the cool part is it feels like a hill because it's actually a hill on the map. How do the tanks move? That's important. It's a tank game. The tanks can move to one of six squares on any given turn. So this tank could move to this square, this square, this square, or this square, this square, this square. Couldn't move to that square. Why? Because tanks don't drive sideways. You program the tank movement with this really cool thing here. You set all the tanks in motion at the same time because you program them at all. Now I'm just going to program these three, 1, 1B, and 1A. If I set my dial right here, it means the tank's going to go 1 square ahead. So 1B, next turn is going to do that. If I set it there, it's going to do this. If I set it there, it's going to do that. So the tanks will move straight ahead, keeping their facing the same, into one of these sides, one of these spaces. Keeping them facing the same, as I said. Well, suppose I want to turn. That's what this lower dial is for. If you leave it in the red, your facing will be unchanged. Let's go over here, the ones we're actually talking about. So 1B, keep the facing that way, move over here. It means 1B is now going there. Cool. How do I turn? I can use that way or that way to turn my tank. And since it's a tank now, it doesn't just turn like you drive a car on the road. It's got certain permutations. You have to set the tank up in one of your diagonals and set the direction. So if my turn is here, 1B is now going, I've got to move that one. 1B is now going to be like that. That's how it's going to turn. Let me move it again. I've set up like this. the tank's going to go like that. So every turn, each player is going to program all your living tanks left. Let's just go through these three like I said. 1B will have to do this and go straight. 1 will go that way and turn. And this one will do a sexier maneuver. He's going to go that way and turn. All right, how do we execute that? When both players have programmed, you say ready. Then before we move, you're going to put your shots out. Let's set the thing aside and put our shells out, as they're called. Your tank has a firing cone that looks like that. Now that may look complicated, but they've got a lot of help here for you. As we'll slide over on this side. Along the side of the map are these colored circles. Like this tank is sitting right next to a blue circle here. And if I look up, there's another blue circle up here. That tells me that's the extreme long shot for that tank, blue to blue circle. That'll help me get a feel for the zone, and I think players will catch on very quickly to how that works. Let's get back over here. We've programmed our tanks, but nobody's moved yet. So once programming is complete, but movement hasn't started yet, you put your shots out. And every tank has a shell in its specific number. So here's 1A, that matches tank 1A. 1A is on the green line. I can shoot as far as green, I can shoot as far as there, but I don't know whether that tank's going to be there next turn. So let's say I'm thinking the tank's going to move forward. I'm going to program my shot there. And 1 also has its own shell. It's going to program a shot here because one of these two tanks might come off that berm and get it. And then 1B is going to program right here and see if one of those tanks will come off. All the tanks program their shots according to where they are now, and then they move. Does that sound familiar, military folks? It's called shoot and scoot. That's what they're doing in the game. Once all the shells are out, then the players execute their moves. And when you're getting started with this, you might do it one at a time and then walk through it very carefully. But once you've got the hang of it, you're just going to be moving your stuff. Let's quickly grab some of these and say that these folks shot there, and there, and there. All right? Now, 1B was programmed to go straight. Oh, they guessed right. That's a bad thing. 1 is going to the diagonal. And 1A is doing a fancy this way. All right? Which we took off the map, sorry. Okay. So where 1B moves and the shell ends up, you take one hit. And we've got these cool fire things we'll slide on here. The tank will walk around with that. When he takes a second hit, he is destroyed. So quickly, that's how the tanks move, that's how the tanks shoot, and that's how big they are. Just to give you a feel for the massive, almost 4-pound game that comes in a box called Final Act, which is still on Kickstarter and gaining strength. I hope it helps you see what a cool thing we've got here and how it really is worth the money.